Did you know no matter where you live, city, country, suburbs, even in an apartment if you've got a patio, you can have your yard certified as a backyard wildlife habitat, no matter the size of your yard? You sure can. My wife and I did that a few years ago. You can hear some of the wildlife in the background probably, and it's been incredibly rewarding. And I'm going to show you today how you can do that with just 5 simple things. The first thing you need to provide is a water source, and we do this in a couple of different ways, and we provide water year-round. So a couple of years ago I became interested in water gardening, and I have these container gardens in our yard. You see it's filled with water, and it's got some water lettuce in it. It's got water hyacinths, and you can't see them because of the sunlight, but I've also got goldfish in here, which takes care of mosquito control, so I don't have any issues with mosquitoes. By the way, the water lettuce provides food for my turtles inside, so I harvest water lettuce out of the water gardens and feed my turtles, which is a pretty cool thing. So this is our front water garden. It's a little bit deeper, as you can tell. Let's go around back. And here's our backyard water garden. You can tell it's much more shallow, and I've got, of course, water lettuce in here and another plant going. I see a lot of birds, squirrels, rabbits drinking out of this. Let me encourage you, if you have a shallow water garden, if you decide to do this, you notice I've got some stones in here, and that's where the birds take their baths, and it gets used a lot. So the first thing you have to do is provide a source of water. You might ask, what do I do in the winter to provide water? Because these are going to freeze up. They do freeze up. In the winter, I bring the goldfish inside. They live inside, a life of luxury during the winter. Well, in the winter, we have these large 3-gallon outdoor dog bowls that are electrified. They have a cord that runs through them and a heating element, so we provide water all winter long. So step number 1, be sure you've got a water source in your yard. You'll be amazed what you see coming once they determine it's there, especially if you don't live near a body of water. We've seen squirrel, rabbit, chipmunks, insects of all kinds. As a matter of fact, in this shallow water garden, we have dragonflies breeding in there, and birds of every description. So number 1, water. Number 2, a food source. And so when we think of food sources for wildlife, we usually think of bird feeders, right? And you'll notice we don't have any bird feeders in the yard right now because it is summertime and we tend to go a more natural route. So here is something that we do. Instead of cleaning out our fence row, we just let it grow wild, and of course there are all kinds. This is blackberries, and the animals feast on these blackberries, and I'll admit, we do too. My wife makes amazing blackberry cobbler. And this is a mulberry tree. A lot of people think of mulberries as being nuisances because they do drop those berries and they stain. But again, this is a great natural source of food. And in the winter, we do put bird feeders out because that natural source of food is not available in the wintertime. But those berry bushes are not the only things that we do to keep a source of food in our yard during the summer. If you have clover in your yard, don't cut it down. Don't use weed eaters. Don't get rid of it because it is one of the main things that honeybees feast on. Leave the clover in your yard. And of course we have flowers. We have peonies, we have daylilies, we have the water hyacinths. All those are great sources of food. So we've talked about food. We've talked about water. The next one is shelter and a place to raise young. Well, thinking about shelter, you may be thinking about birdhouses and things like that, right? We don't have birdhouses, but we have plenty of natural shelter. Large, mature trees in your yard, a great source of shelter. And unless you live in an apartment with a patio, you probably already have this. You can actually check that off of your list. So we had to have a diseased tree taken down, and we have taken this corner of our yard and left it as a woodpile, as natural shelter. It's just kind of letting it grow wild, and it's become a really great place for birds. Animals can raise their young here. As a matter of fact, in this woodpile here, we have a family of 5-lined skinks, a lizard living here, raising their babies. We don't see them very often. The babies are only like 2 inches long, and they are just the cutest little thing. And as soon as I see one and grab for my camera, it's gone. But leave some wild corners in your yard for shelter, for places for animals to raise their young. And, you know, shelter doesn't take a lot. And you may want to put some birdhouses or things like that up. We don't do that, but I know that a lot of people do that. I think, honestly, I don't want to work that hard. We still have all kinds of nesting animals in our yard. A great shelter that is often neglected is ground cover. This is ivy. Some of it's periwinkle, if you're familiar with periwinkle. Doesn't get very high, and we're letting this corner of our yard go wild also. Back in the back corner, we had rabbits nesting there early this year. Had a family of rabbits raised in the yard. All kinds of small animals nest in an area like this. So if you're looking for shelter, and you still want it to be aesthetically pleasing, let me encourage you to look at some different kinds of ground covers. They make great shelter for the smaller and kind of neglected animals. So we've talked about water, we've talked about food, we've talked about shelter and cover and a place to raise their young. And the last thing that you need to be certified by the National Wildlife Federation is to practice sustainable practices. And that's not entirely difficult. It's not very difficult at all. We have a compost pile. We compost and use the compost for our flower beds, which in turn, when we compost the flower beds, grows more flowers, provides more natural food. We also recycle all of our plastic and our metal and our aluminum. So sustainable practices, that's the last piece of the puzzle. Once you have all of these things in place, you can go to the National Wildlife Federation website, and I'll put a link to that in the description of this video, and you can apply, and they will approve you or tell you what you need to work on, and it's just so rewarding, and you can just leave it go at that. You can get a flag, you can get a banner, you can get a sign to put in your yard. But for us, it was not about flags or banners or signs. It was just about trying to make the world a little more friendly place for our feathered and furred and scaled friends. This has been a great project for us, and I'm going to say it has really helped my mental health kind of tackling this project. My wife and I worked together on it, of course, and now that we've had it done for a couple of years, it's just a little bit of maintenance work. So you too can have your yard certified as a certified backyard wildlife habitat. I hope you'll consider it. If you do, let me know, and let me know how it goes.